Welcome into episode 22 of the Godly Young Men podcast. We very much appreciate you joining us, and a happy Memorial Day weekend.
Right.
Hope everybody had an enjoyable Memorial Day. I know I certainly did. We want to get right into today's episode about overcoming temptation. Had a fun episode last week. Looked at sports and why we firmly believe that it's very important for young guys to be involved in, for young guys to go out and do. And going to switch gears and do something a little bit more serious, something a little bit that's got a little more gravity to it, I guess, and that is temptation. And I want to preface this discussion by talking about the fact that young people, I think, hear so much about overcoming temptation that I think they can very often tune it out. Right? How many dozens, hundreds of lessons have you young people heard about peer pressure? Right? I mean, that seems to be the go-to subject when it comes to young people, and I think for good reason. I mean, that's something that's very prevalent in young people's life, but I think because we hear it so often, we just have the rote answers that we need to. We have them memorized. We know and so we kind of tune stuff like this out. We're here to encourage you. Don't tune out. We're going to say some stuff that's going to be hard to hear. We're going to say some stuff in this episode that we think is obviously incredibly important, but don't tune us out. I just wanted to start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was thinking, is how many youth rallies are about this subject. Like, oh, yep, we've heard it all. We've heard it all. Maybe you have. We just want to make sure we're taking it seriously and that we are aware of some things. And so we've created a 3-part outline of, as we're challenging ourselves, we're challenging you, the listener, or the watcher, I guess, just about the idea of, are we overcoming temptation? Are we people who want to overcome temptation? And there's kind of a 3-step process to this. First, we got to be aware of the temptations. Second, we got to make sure we're not putting ourselves in tempting situations. We're avoiding that. And third, if we are in those situations, what do we do about it? We're going to hit all 3 of those. I want to jump right in, though, on the first part of our outline, which is be aware of what actually tempts you. It's like, well, this is a no-brainer. Duh. Of course, we have to be aware. This
really drill down on it is what we mean.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is easier said than done.
Yeah, because you think about everything that is, I guess, a possibility of tempting you in today's world. We're not all going to be tempted by the same thing.
Right.
And I think it can be irresponsible of us, especially as individuals, to just lump all the temptations into the same category. There are things that I've never really been tempted to drink alcohol a day in my life.
Right.
That's something that's just not a temptation for me. It very well could be a temptation for one of you.
Right.
There's other things, I mean, cussing, not a huge, there's just things that I think for the majority of guys are going to be temptations, things like lust and porn that we're going to get into. But I think you have to be so aware of what it is that actually tempts you. Kind of know when you deal with people who are involved in porn addiction, know your triggers, right? Is something that you talk about quite a bit. Along the same lines, you have to know what it is that Satan is going to use against you, because I can promise you one thing. Satan knows what your weak points are. Satan knows what you're tempted by. So you got to know those things as well.
That's right. And think about building a wall. You can put all the troops and build a concrete wall 10 feet thick around something that, I will never drink alcohol. Cool. That's not where Satan goes to. He's not trying to wage war against the strongest part of your wall. He sneaks into the back wall. The part that you've neglected, there's no troops there, there's no nothing there. Like, that's how the enemy works, is they're going to exploit the weaknesses. It's very easy for us to kind of take this like, well, I'm really good at this, or I'm not tempted by that. Well, good. But where are you tempted? Where are you weak? What's the weakest part of your armor that the enemy is going to do?
And think about all the various ways that you can be tempted, especially as a guy. We've got a list here. Obviously, I think these top 2 are the primary ones that we're going to talk about, and the primary ones that, let's face it, 99.9% of guys are going to fight.
Right.
And that is lust, sex, porn, obviously. But then other things. You talked about, when we were talking about this, jealousy, envy of others, other guys maybe, other guys' girlfriends maybe. Alcohol, we talked about that already. Language, arrogance, pride, all kinds of things that we can be tempted by. But the way we wanted to start this discussion, and really this is something that I've tried to, every class that I've ever taught, every sermon I've ever preached about temptation, this is the point that I've always tried to drive home. I know you have, I'm sure you have as well. Overcoming temptation has to be your responsibility. Yeah, and when we're talking specifically to young men, godly young men, it can be so easy to, they get baptized, right? And we've talked about before, they're on the JV squad of Christianity, right? Like, they don't really have to step up anything. You have to own you overcoming temptation. It has to be something that you decide. It is your responsibility. God is not going to look at you on Judgment Day. You fell to that temptation or you succumb to that temptation, I'm going to get onto your parents for that. Or
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, you are responsible. I think so many young men specifically, it's like that doesn't even cross them. They don't process the fact that you have to decide. That's so big in this discussion.
It's your relationship with God that's on the line.
Yeah.
Not anybody else's. And it's easy to say, yeah, I guess I probably should avoid those things. My mom and dad are really against me drinking. My mom and dad are really, my mom flips if I ever look at porn, right?
My parents don't let me, go anywhere with my girlfriend,
Right.
Yeah.
They don't let me use language around the house, but I will when I'm out in public, right? When I'm not around them. Like, no, the temptations that are common to guys our age, it has to be, I love how you said it, like, it's our responsibility to overcome those things. It cannot be, well, my parents want me to do it. And the reason why that's so important is, like, if it's not enough for you to want it yourself, you're never going to buy into the process.
Yeah.
It's like if you were having to work and, every bit of your money goes to somebody else, how hard are you going to work? If it's for somebody else, not a ton. Like, you want to be able to reap the rewards of your own labor. And I would say this is labor. There's a laborious aspect to avoiding temptation. Who's reaping the rewards? If it's just, well, my mom and dad are happy with me. Okay, what happens when you move out of the house?
Exactly. That's
what happens when you get to college? What happens when they're not there? This is where people go off into the crazy train, and they're at party culture, and everything becomes a big part because it was always for their parents and not for themselves.
That's why kids, like you just said it, but this is why kids go off the rails at college. It's because they've heard the temptation lessons, they've heard about peer pressure, and they abided by it.
Right.
While they were in their house.
That's exactly
while
it.
they were in their parents' house. As soon as they got a little taste of freedom, and as soon as they're like, there's nobody looking over my shoulder, cool, it's because you never made it, or it's because they never made it their responsibility.
That's right. It wasn't part of their heart. It wasn't a deep, seated belief. It was as my parents believed.
So that's where we're starting this discussion with this first point of be aware of what actually tempts you. Only you can know that. I mean, you're going to know that better than anybody else. And so you have to pinpoint those things. And listen, temptation is going to be a part of our lives every day for the rest of our life. Satan is never going to reach a point where he's like, all right, I'm going to stop trying to tempt. I'm going to move on to somebody else. He doesn't do that. We're going to be dealing with this. And so you have to have a plan. You have to, again, make up your mind that you want to fight it, and you have to have a plan to do so. So I want to go ahead and move us into the second phase, because I think this is really what we are most passionate about. So the first phase, you got to be aware of what tempts you. Number 2, don't put yourself in tempting situations. Don't put yourself in tempting situations. I want you to get us into 1 Corinthians 10. We save that till now, because everybody knows 1 Corinthians 10:13, right? God won't allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but we'll provide a way of escape. And that's me paraphrasing, of course. We have the verse on the screen, but everybody knows that verse. I think so often we can use that verse to say, God will get me out of it. God, God's gonna explain why that's such a illogical position to hold.
I mean, it's fairly basic when you stop and think about it. Like, well, God will get me out of it. Okay, so I walk in, I have no idea how to swim, and I just jump into the deep end. Well, God will save me. Why in the world were you in the deep end in the first place? It's a fairly easy concept. You look at 1 Corinthians 10, verse 12. You look at really the context of everything leading up to it, and it's, hey, we have to make sure that we are living for God. And if you happen to find yourself, God will provide a way of escape, which we'll look at in the next one. But there's the concept of living for God, right? Making sure that we are not putting ourselves in those situations. That's one of those, if you find yourself in that situation, God will provide a way of escape. Don't find yourself in the situation. We have a strong duty to make sure that we know what the temptations are, to avoid them, and to live for God in every possible way.
It's like again, to use another analogy, I'm going to jump off a cliff and God's going to be there to save me. How about you don't jump off the cliff at all?
Right.
There's so much of this that frustrates me, and why I'm so passionate about it is because I see young people that they hear the lessons, overcome temptation, and yet they put themselves in situations where they are for sure going to be tempted. And we're about to get into some of these. And before you respond with, okay, well, shouldn't it be my parents' job to keep me out of the situations? Yes, it 100% should. But are you baptized? Right. Are you a follower of Christ? Right. Have you decided to commit your life to Christ? If you have, again, like we started with, you can't shirk that responsibility and say, well, my parents let me, so I'm good. Yeah. You have to decide, and let's get into some of these. Prom is the first one we've got on the list. I have been a very vocal advocate against prom for a long time. Why? Is it because the minute you step foot at prom, you're going to hell? Not necessarily. What goes on at proms? it goes without saying.
Promiscuous dancing and drinking a lot of the time.
After parties.
Incredibly
immodest. At the very minimum, immodest dress and lust happens at prom.
Right.
And so, again, I see young people that are listening to these lessons, overcome temptation, and yet they go to prom. Right. And it's like, well, my parents let me. You decide. You, as a godly young man, if you are still of prom age, decide. That's not going to be, because you think about all the different ways you can be tempted at prom: immodesty, lust, being alone with your date.
Yeah, the expectation of what comes after.
Yes,
we
exactly.
all know. I mean, come on. We all know what's supposed to happen after, and the guys that don't get it after are kind of disappointed, or their friends are going to ask about them later, or whatever else. Come on. I mean, we all know what happens there. Don't put yourself in that situation. We would strongly advise, don't go to prom. Number 2, I would say, is going to swim parties. You see this in high school, and a lot of times it's on the movies. I don't know if it actually happens that way. But you get invited to these parties where, there's going to be guys, girls there. How many girls are in revealing swimsuits? And in their bikinis?
All of them.
Yeah. All of them. And, boy, no, I'm going to make a covenant not to lust. Okay, if you're home alone, or if you're home and you're reading a book, that's pretty easy to do. You go to a swim party, that's a lot harder to do. Like, this isn't difficult. You go to the beach, you're probably going to see some things that are going to ramp up the difficulty level. That's like going on. It's like if you've never played I hate to use this because I'm not a video game guy, but like you've never played a video game. You've never played Call of Duty. Well, let me put it on hero mode or whatever, legend, the most advanced, whatever it may be. Like, let me put it on extreme difficulty.
Good luck.
How well do you think that's going to work?
Right.
If you're falling to lust and you're falling to porn and the temptations like that, like regularly, and you think that you're going to go there, well, now I'm going to be strong.
And this is what drives me nuts about the way we typically teach young people how to peer pressure and overcome temptation. And we teach, well, God will make a way of escape, and you've really got to avoid it and overcome it. Oh, by the way, have a ton of fun at prom. Oh, by the way, we ignore this stuff. It's like, you shouldn't be mixed swimming with girls, especially the ones that are immodestly dressed. You just shouldn't. Yeah. And nobody ever comes out and says that. We're saying that. You shouldn't do that. You decide as a junior in high school or a senior in high school, that's going to really be a bummer to miss out where all your friends are going to be. And let's be honest, a lot of guys want to see girls that are dressed like that. Yeah. You've got to decide you're not going to put yourself in that situation. It goes for all of these that we've got on here. The next one would be being alone with your girlfriend. How easy is it to not just be tempted, but to fall victim to temptation when you put yourself in that position of being alone in a car, alone at in your in the living room when everybody else gone to bed, whatever it is. Yeah. You've got to remove yourself from those tempting situations.
We're guys. We've been here before. We're both married. We understand what that's like. So we're telling you from personal experience. I'm certainly telling you from personal experience. Being alone is a
bad idea.
It's a bad idea. Seeking time alone. We courted. We weren't even supposed to be alone, and we sought time alone, and it was not a good thing. I realized we're dating. It's not that big a deal. It happens like that. I mean, so fast. You go, well, I got a lid on it. I'm in control.
No, you don't.
No, and what happens when she kind of gives you that look, and you can tell she really wants something, and you're going to turn her down? I mean, this is a girl that you really like. Of course, you don't want to be rejected, and you don't want her to. You don't want to reject her. You don't want to hurt her feelings, and so what do? You give in.
You give in, yeah.
Well, if you were never there in the first place, there's nothing to give into.
And again, you're going to be looked at as odd. I was certainly looked at as odd when you can't ride in a car with Rachel by yourself. What? When we were together before we got married. And because it is weird, because let's face it, guys and girls are dating at 15, 14 these days. 8. And so the idea of being alone being alone together is nothing. People do that all the time.
Right.
And so you deciding with whoever it is that you're dating, which we'll have a whole other episode on dating and all the pitfalls with that. But it starts with you deciding I'm not gonna put myself in that situation. I'm not gonna put her in that situation. We're going to hang out with friends. We're gonna we'll save all that for the dating episode. But the point still stands. Don't put yourself in that situation. You be the one to decide. We're not gonna do that.
That's right. Another fourth one: unsupervised teenage gatherings. And I would even say this goes up to college age as well. And I know they don't supervise at college, but you can get some crazy things happening at these parties. I had a cousin who ended up dying of fentanyl overdose. Heroin overdose, but it was laced with fentanyl. And it all started from him being at a teenage party where there were, these random pills there. Yep. And he ended up, him and 3 other buddies did it. He and another buddy are dead, and 2 never touched it again. You don't know if it'll be you. Yeah. And I'm not saying that I'm not using scare tactics as much. Like, obviously, that's a horrible situation and incredibly sad, and I still miss him. But the whole idea is what happens at these unsupervised parties. What temptations will you face that maybe you're not up for? Maybe the peer pressure in a situation like that is skyrocketed. Don't put yourself in situations where there's a ton of teenagers hanging out and nobody's watching.
I haven't brought up this analogy yet, but it's the idea like you're trying to eat really well, right? You're trying to be healthy and not eat bad. Maybe you don't stop by the Krispy Kreme on the way home. Maybe don't drive right by the hot now sign, right? Maybe don't go to the place that serves ice cream because you know you're really going to want it. Stay away from that. Every single one of these, we're just beating this into the ground because it's so basic and it's so fundamental and it's so elementary, but we've got so many young men that are just going to prom, going to swim parties, being alone with their girlfriend.
All my buddies are going to Cold Stone, man. We're going to go get ice cream. Aren't you going to come along?
Right.
Like, well, man, I'm trying to eat well. Yeah, wow, what a
I'll just go and not eat anything.
That's exactly it. I'll go. I won't eat anything. And then, boy, this ice cream's really good. Like, that's a perfect analogy. And the question is, how bad do you want to stick to your diet? How bad do you want to do that? And what are you doing that for? It goes back to the point number one. Well, my parents really want me to be on this diet, but really, I love the ice cream. I mean, that sounds incredible.
Yeah.
And so, maybe I'll go, but I won't do the ice cream because, well, what if your parents don't find out about it? Okay, that would take, I mean, it doesn't take much, but don't go to these, don't be caught off guard at these, and don't put yourself in those unsupervised groups.
So the next one would be basically having unlimited access to your phone. Can be very, very tempting. And so there's several ways you can mitigate this. We've talked before. I think this has been a point for us before. Keep your phone out of your bedroom.
Yeah.
And, well, my parents, they don't really care. They should set that rule. Yeah, they should set that rule. But if they're not, you decide.
You set the rule.
You decide, I'm going to keep my phone in the kitchen at night. Because goodness knows how much trouble you can get into at night, 1 a.m, you can't sleep. Oh, got my phone right there. Awesome.
Right.
And so, that's a very simple one. That's a very basic one. Another one would be you make sure and you set up software filters on your phone.
Yep.
We're going to devote a whole episode to pornography. We're not going to talk a ton about it here, but obviously when we're talking about temptation, we have to bring it up. You decide your phone is not going to be used for that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Put Covenant Eyes on there. Put some blocker on there. Make sure that your parents know about the restrictions, or an accountability partner does, or whatever it may be. Like, make it a part of, you've decided to lock down your phone. You've decided not to have, if you have a computer in your bedroom, you face it toward the door. Anybody can see at any time. Anybody could walk in.
Keep the door open.
Keep the door open. I mean, these are good habits. Why are they good habits? Because we don't want to walk down this path.
Because you don't want to find yourself at 2 a.m. looking at porn.
That's right.
How did I get here? Maybe because you had your phone in your room.
And your parents walk in and your computer's facing away from the door and they're like, what you doing over there? Nothing. I mean, that's not some TV trope. I mean, those things have happened.
Right.
I've been the one to do it. So don't put yourself there in that situation. The last one that we would say is, consider the friends you hang out with. Be wise. Be wise with the people. I mean, those are possible temptations, not because friends themselves are temptations. No, but what will they invite you to do? What will they maybe push you into?
You know deep down what your friends are involved in.
Right.
If you really are friends, you know if they're going to be the ones to pull out alcohol at a party. You know if they're going to be the ones to, hey, did you, do it with your girlfriend type of thing. Like, you know who you're going to surround yourself with. And so be wise. We're going to have a whole I keep teasing episodes. We're going to have a whole episode on picking good friends and surrounding yourself with people who you should surround yourself with. But this is a big one about tempting situations. Man, if you don't want to find yourself in a tempting situation, which you shouldn't, don't surround yourself with people who will put you in a tempting situation.
Right. I don't want to be tempted with porn. I don't want to be tempted with drinking. Yeah, but all my buddies are drunks, basically. At 18 years old, they drink like crazy and they watch porn all the time. I don't know.
Maybe find new buddies.
Get some new friends. So, we wanted to add that part because to me, it's kind of, my dad used to tell me, like, if you know where that road goes, don't even look down it.
Exactly. That's such a good way to put it.
That's all we're saying is if you know where it goes, if you know where it leads, why would you start down it? Why would you even look around the corner and go, oh, wow, that's interesting. Just don't go there. It leads to destruction.
The scriptural version of that is Psalm 1, where he says, blessed is the man who doesn't even walk in the counsel of the ungodly, doesn't stand in the paths of sinners, doesn't sit in the seat of the scornful. You're not putting yourself in that situation. And again, to beat it into the ground again, young men are jumping headfirst into this stuff these days, and we're here trying to encourage you and trying to tell you, don't jump headfirst into those. You're going to be looked at as different. You're going to be looked at as weird. You're going to maybe miss out on some things, but guess what? You're going to be pleasing to God. You're going to be a godly young man.
Read the Proverbs. That's all Solomon talks about is, hey, avoid this and avoid that. Like, yeah, you may get there, but most of it has to do with not what happens when you get there. It's don't put yourself there.
Right.
Avoid that part of town where the harlots are. I mean, All of that is wisdom from Solomon. Is he telling his son, you're going to hell if you ever look down? No, he's saying it's really unwise and it will lead you to destruction if you're not careful.
If you don't remember anything else from this episode, this is, again, kind of the second point. But remember this one. Don't put yourself in these tempting situations. There's so many opportunities you have to be in a tempting situation. Remove yourself from it. Because we talk about 1 Corinthians 10, we're going to get in the last one here, but we talk about 1 Corinthians 10, God will make a way of escape, but it's on you to remove the obstacles that are going to be in your path. God is going to make the way of escape, but you don't jump headfirst into temptation. God's going to save me, jumping off the cliff type of thing. Let's get into the last one, though. So we've covered so far the first element of be aware of what actually tempts you. Don't put yourself in tempting situations. This final one, when you are tempted, because even if you do everything you can to avoid tempting situations, you're not going to completely avoid temptation because Satan is really good at what he does. Yeah. So this last aspect of when you do fall into temptation, how do you get out of it? So I'll ask you that. I'll let you get started on it. When again, all the roadblocks have been removed and all the hindrances, and yet you still fall into it, what do you do?
This is the kicker, right? I mean, this is the difficult question. We can take a page out of Jesus' book. Matthew 4, he is tempted. He's tempted 3 separate times.
And in 3 different ways.
And in 3 different ways, exactly. I mean, he's starving. He hasn't eaten in 40 days, and he's tempted with bread. Growing up, I kind of had this idea of, well, he's Jesus. Of course, it wasn't an actual temptation. He knew what he was doing. It wouldn't have been a temptation if he wasn't tempted. Exactly. If he didn't want it.
If it wasn't possible for him to sin, it would not have been a temptation.
That's exactly it. Well, I'll give you all the kingdoms of the earth. Ultimately, that's what Christ is going to get in the end, but that was the shortcut. It's the same thing Eve did. I mean, she took the shortcut, the shortest way to get there, right? And I would say that's what Satan offered Jesus, is the shortest way to gratify what he was going to get in the end, which is to rule over everybody. So what does Jesus do? He quotes scripture, yes, and you'll hear that, quoting scripture. But
I always thought, so it's funny. You do hear that, we need to be like Jesus. We need to quote scripture, when we're in tempting situations. And I'm picturing you're at a party and a guy gives you an alcoholic beverage, and you're like, now it says in Ephesians 5 that we shouldn't be drunk with wine.
Be drunk with wine.
And you're in a situation, your girlfriend wants to make out with you, and you're like, it says in Proverbs 5, nobody does that.
Right.
So yes, I agree. The principle of you need to know scripture and know why stuff is wrong, but let's face it, you're in that situation with your girlfriend, you're not going to be quoting Proverbs 5.
Probably not.
And so, get into, Jesus knew what he was about.
That's really what it comes down to. He knew what he was about. He knew what his mission was. And yes, ultimately to die on the cross for our sins. He knew that this was a shortcut to bow down to Satan and to get all the kingdoms of the earth. That's what he was ultimately getting.
Yeah.
He could have gotten it a lot faster and a lot less painful, obviously. I mean, it would have cost him very little, quote unquote, but it would have cost him everything. Well, that's really what temptation is it costs you very little, quote unquote, and costs you everything. But Jesus knew what he was about. And not only did he know he was going to have to go to the cross for this, he also knew right after this, I'm picking 12 apostles that are going to go and establish my kingdom on earth. The 40 days in the wilderness was to align himself with God and was to spend time in prayer and fasting, getting ready to choose the 12 men that literally would take the gospel to the entire world. I mean, that was the most important.
There was a long-term goal in place.
Yes, and he knew it. That's what it comes down to, is he knew the promises of God, but he also knew what his goal was. Not just to die in 3 years. This is the start of his ministry, not just at the end. His goal was to choose men coming down off of this, out of the wilderness, and he stuck to the goal. He understood what it was all about. And I think where we get caught in temptation is we don't know why we don't want it. We don't know what the goal is. We don't know where we're going. We don't know why lust is a problem. I look ahead and I guess I probably shouldn't be lusting after other women when I'm married, but I don't know. I'm 15 years old, so I got off. Yeah. But Jesus knew there were immediate consequences to this, but he also knew who he was and what he was about.
Yeah. And this is, man, we started the episode with this, and this is just where we really wanted to drive it home here at the end, because Jesus decided he was going to fight the temptation.
Yeah.
Jesus knew, like you said, what he was about. He knew who he was serving. If you don't know those things, you're not going to beat temptation. Right. You're not going to overcome it. And that's a very maybe depressing outlook, like a very pessimistic outlook, you might say. But at the end of the day, you have to decide that you want to fight temptation. Because if you don't decide that, you never will. You never will beat temptation. You'll never probably even start the fight against temptation. And so for godly young men, it is so difficult because of all the ways to be tempted these days. Walking through the mall, grocery store checkout line. You can't enjoy the beach, hardly anymore. Your phone, social media. So many ways for guys to be tempted. You're inundated, specifically with sexual temptation. Yep. Decide right now that you want to fight it.
Yeah,
God will make a way. We were not trying to denigrate 1 Corinthians 10. I mean, that is such a valuable piece of scripture to show God will provide the way of escape. But the verse right before that, take heed lest you fall, right? Anybody who thinks you stand, take heed lest you fall. That's where we're wanting you to be. Right. That's where we're asking you to be. And to, again, just decide right now that you're going to fight it.
And the way of escape means you're looking for it, right?
Yes.
You know where it is. Like, oh, I know God will save me, but you're in the middle of a burning building and you're just okay with the flames engulfing you. Like, well, no, you need to go, hey, it's right over there. You need to know where the escape is at all times. And you could tell, and this is Jesus quoting scripture, but he knew the ways of escape before Satan ever tempted him. He knew what he was about, again, but he knew the ways of escape. And I think it's imperative when we enter into these things, avoid it at all costs. But if you do get into it, what's your way of escape?
Well, and I think so many guys are kind of like, I'll figure that out when I get there. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. I'll just make it up as I go. That can't be the option.
No, because you freeze. And I've been there myself, where you're tempted to look at you're tempted to lust or to do whatever else, and you freeze in the moment. And it's like, well, why didn't you call your accountability partner? I didn't think about it. Well, why didn't you have covenant eyes set up? I don't know. Like, in the moment is not where you're going to answer that question. You do it ahead of time, and then you'll know the ways of escape when you get there. Sometimes you are going to have to enter into questionable circumstances where you're going to be tempted. This is why accountability is important. This is why talking things through. Hey, what is your way of escape? How are you going to get through that without lusting? How are you going to get through that without how are you going to go to that party without engaging in some of those things?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You need to have a battle plan to go against this. And again, you have to have a strong enough why. We cannot stress that enough. If your why isn't strong enough, you'll fall to anything. If your why is strong enough, you'll stand for everything, or stand against everything that comes your way, as long as you have a strong enough why.
Right. If your why is, well, because my parents don't want me to, that's not good enough.
Right.
If your why is, well, because I don't want to have a bad reputation.
I'll go to hell.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm 15. I probably won't die until I'm 80. I'll make it up between now and then. I mean, that's not even a strong enough why. It has to be something more in the immediate of, I seek the relationship with God, and I know this is going to strain that.
I'm glad you brought up accountability. That's where we're going to wrap right here. I do want to leave that as kind of a piece of encouragement when it comes to, you're going to face these temptations. It is very difficult to face them alone. Obviously, you need to have the relationship with God, to go to Him, to study, to pour out your heart to Him in prayer. It also helps to have friends, to have people in your life. Maybe it's your dad, your parents. Maybe it's somebody at your church, whoever it is that you can go to and say, I'm really struggling with this. I've got I've got prom coming. I've got I've got a swim party I've been invited to. Whatever it is, find somebody you can talk to about these things. And again, hopefully it's your parents, but we understand it's not always going to be. Find somebody that you can be accountable to, somebody that can hold you accountable for the things that you know that you are supposed to be doing. Somebody who can hold you accountable to overcome the temptations, to not put yourself in the tempting situations, who can go to you if they find out you went to a party or whatever. Hey, what's that about? Why'd you go? Tell me about that. Find those people. If you don't have them, look for them. And I think that can be the most encouraging thing, is that you are working as a team with somebody else to fight temptation. We see that in Scripture. The threefold cord is not easily broken. That's such a, again, we should probably do a whole episode on accountability partners, because it's something that's so helpful, specifically for guys, to really band together to beat Satan. So
I think that's a great way to wrap up. Honestly, I don't think there's much to add to that. Overcoming temptation is obviously important, not just because we say so, not just because your parents say so. God wants us to. He wants a relationship with you. That's what it comes down to. And don't allow sin to stand in the way of a rock solid relationship with God, because everything else that we've discussed in these podcasts, everything that's going to be coming up in these podcasts, is predicated upon you establishing the best relationship with God possible. These things take away from that. You'll never be the husband, the father, the person, the man of God, the elder, the preacher, whatever it is. You're never going to be that you're supposed to be if we don't have a strong enough why to avoid these temptations. And so with that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you for listening to the Godly Young Men podcast. We'll talk to you next week.